Good morning, and welcome to the June open meeting of the Federal Communications Commission, a month when we celebrate Pride and reaffirm that LGBTQ rights are human rights. Madam Secretary, would you please introduce our agenda this morning?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Good morning to you and good morning, Commissioners. For today's meeting, you will hear 4 items for your consideration. First, you will consider a notice of proposed rulemaking that would expedite the transition to NG 911 and help ensure the nation's 911 system functions effectively and with the most advanced capabilities available. Second, you will consider a notice of proposed rulemaking proposing rules to strengthen the ability of consumers to decide which robocalls and robotexts they wish to receive by exercising their right to grant and revoke consent to callers. The item also proposes to codify the Commission's past guidance on prior express consent to make these requirements more apparent to callers and consumers. Third, you will consider a report and order that would find that the accessibility requirements of Section 716 of the Act and Part 14 of the Commission's rules apply to all services and equipment meeting the definition of interoperable video conferencing service. An accompanying notice of proposed rulemaking would propose to amend Part 14 of the Commission's rules to enhance the accessibility of interoperable video conferencing services and explore whether the Interstate Telecommunications Relay Services Fund can be used to support the integrated provision of relay service in video conferences. Fourth, you will consider a notice of proposed rulemaking that would explore how spectrum in the 42 gigahertz band might be available through one of several innovative, non-exclusive spectrum access models, which have the potential to provide solutions in this evolving space. This is your agenda for today. Please note item 5, a restricted adjudicatory matter from the Media Bureau as listed in the June 1st Sunshine Notice has been adopted by the Commission and deleted from today's agenda. The first item is titled Advancing the Transition to Next Generation 911 and will be presented by the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau, and David Firth, Deputy Chief of the Bureau, will give the introduction.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Firth, please proceed.
Thank you, and good morning, Chairwoman Rosenworcel and Commissioners. Every year, people in need of emergency assistance make more than 200 million calls to 911 across the United States. Each of these calls travels on dedicated 911 networks to reach a telecommunicator who can dispatch aid. With the transition to Next Generation 911, or NG 911, state and local 911 authorities are replacing legacy circuit-switched 911 networks with Internet protocol-based networks and applications that will support new 911 capabilities. These capabilities include text, video, and data, as well as improved interoperability and system resilience. This, in turn, will help first responders save lives. Completing the NG 911 transition will also require originating service providers, that is, the 911 caller's phone company, to format these 911 calls to be compatible with NG 911 and to deliver the calls to new destination points in IP-based networks established by 911 authorities. As state and local 911 authorities have begun to invest in NG 911, some have reported that originating service providers are refusing to connect to these new destination points or are otherwise delaying the transition process. This threatens to impose additional costs and delays on 911 authorities and delay the benefits of NG 911 to the American public. Today we present a notice of proposed rulemaking that would propose steps to define the NG 911 transition responsibilities of wireline, wireless, interconnected VoIP, and internet-based telecommunications relay service providers. We believe the proposals in this item will facilitate the NG 911 transition and help to ensure that the nation's 911 system functions effectively with the most advanced capabilities available. With me today from the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau is Rachel Ware, an attorney advisor in the Policy and Licensing Division. I would also like to thank the other Bureau staff who worked on this item, as well as the other bureaus and offices that contributed. Now I will turn over the floor to Rachel.
Thank you, David. Good morning, Chairwoman and Commissioners. Today, we present a notice of proposed rulemaking that seeks comment on requirements that would advance the transition to Next Generation 911. In 2021, the National Association of State 911 Administrators, NASNA, filed a petition urging the Commission to take action to resolve uncertainty and disputes between originating service providers and 911 authorities regarding the NG 911 transition. The Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau sought comment on NASNA's petition. In response, state 911 authorities and public safety entities described multiple examples of service delivery and cost allocation disputes that have slowed the transition to NG 911 and increased transition costs incurred by state and local 911 agencies. To advance the transition to NG 911, this notice of proposed rulemaking proposes to address what must be delivered to 911 authorities, where it must be delivered, and how costs are allocated for delivery of 911 calls in an NG 911 environment. With respect to what must be delivered, the notice of proposed rulemaking proposes that upon receiving a valid request from a state or local 911 authority that has the capability to accept IP-based communications, providers of wireline, interconnected voice over internet protocol, and internet-based telecommunications relay service must deliver 911 calls, including associated location information, in IP-based format. This is similar to the requirement proposed for wireless and covered text providers in the pending Wireless 911 Location-Based Routing Rulemaking that the Commission initiated last December. With respect to where this information must be delivered, the notice of proposed rulemaking proposes that wireline, wireless, interconnected VoIP, and internet-based telecommunications relay service providers must transmit 911 calls to the destination points designated by a state or local 911 authority. Regarding the allocation of costs, the notice proposes that all originating service providers, including wireless, wireline, interconnected VoIP, and internet-based telecommunications relay service providers, would be presumptively responsible for covering the cost of transmitting 911 calls to the points designated by a 911 authority, including costs associated with delivering the information in IP-based format, unless the state has established an alternative cost allocation mechanism. The notice of proposed rulemaking would not propose to preempt state authority over cost recovery, and states would remain free to establish alternative cost allocation arrangements with providers. However, in the absence of such arrangements, originating service providers would be presumed to be responsible for these costs. The proposed rules would create a consistent framework for ensuring that all originating service providers take the necessary steps to implement the transition to NG 911 in a timely manner in coordination with state and local 911 authorities. The Bureau recommends that the Commission adopt this notice of proposed rulemaking and requests editorial privileges for technical and conforming edits. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear comments from the bench. We will start with Commissioner Carr.
Thanks so much to the team for your work on this. I've had the real sort of good pleasure of visiting a lot of 911 call centers, as a lot of my colleagues have as well, everywhere from Wainwright, Alaska, which sits all the way up on the Chukchi Sea, which is part of the Arctic Ocean, all the way down to Florida and many, many places in between, including just a week or so ago, I was at the 911 call center in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and visited with the dedicated team there. And I'll tell you, as you sort of visit all of these different call centers, there's a lot of common denominators. First and foremost, usually it's a little dim lighting, sort of dark lighting. That's one sort of physical characteristic of a lot of these places. And obviously tremendously dedicated 911 operators. And also there's a good baseline of technology, but in terms of being really good technology, it tends to be hit or miss. And as we look to NG 911 to try to make sure this transition rolls out and does so in an even-handed way, we have some challenges that are not foreign to any tech transition. It's a lot of chicken and egg, who goes first, how do we ensure backward compatibility, how do we make sure we minimize the period of time in which legacy systems and new systems are trying to run in parallel. And I think this is a good item that tries to address some of that, which can help sort of further accelerate and smooth the transition to NG 911. So thanks so much to the team for your work on it. It has my support.
Thank you. Commissioner Starks.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. 911 has a long and successful history, but even more compelling may be its future. And so looking back, we've extended 911 to wireless, texting, satellites, VoIP, as we heard. We've made it easier, quicker, faster for first responders to locate callers automatically, and for employees and hotel guests to secure help from a multi-line phone. We've improved the reliability and resilience of our networks and our situational awareness in the wake of an outage. We've expanded the tools available to restore communications after a disaster. And so as we look ahead, requiring providers to deliver calls and information in IP is a critical next step. Though, as with anything, the details matter here, and so I look forward to hearing the feedback on our proposal, finding the best way forward. Thank you, Ms. Weir, for your hard work on this item as ever. Thank you to the Bureau for the hard work of the team. It has my full support. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Symington.
Thank you. I'm happy to support this item that moves us closer to enabling next-generation 911 across the country. NG 911 will, of course, help PSAPs and first responders get the vital information that they need to respond to an emergency as quickly and effectively as possible. But it will also modernize and simplify our country's 911 infrastructure by allowing states to retire legacy 911 systems and move completely to IP-based delivery of emergency calls and texts. I'm also hopeful that we will develop a robust record on the important issue of who must pay for the cost of this transition. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. You know, it was 55 years ago that State Senator Rankin Fite sat down in the mayor's office in Haleyville, Alabama, and did something new. He used the telephone to dial 911. That call went straight to the local police station where it was answered with an uneventful hello. The start of 911 is a reminder that sometimes the biggest ideas come from the smallest places, and sometimes the most important technologies evolve with little acts and small steps. Today, if you go to Haleyville, and I did for the 50th anniversary of this event, you can take a look at the bright red telephone with a rotary dial that was used for the first 911 call. Of course, a lot has changed about 911 over the last century, but our nation's emergency number remains powerful because we take steps to ensure the technology to support it stays up to date. Over time, we expanded this system from just wired calls to calls made from wireless phones and interconnected VoIP. We added texting to the mix, creating another valuable way to reach out in crisis. More recently, we explored how location-based routing could help ensure that every 911 wireless call goes to the right public safety answering point. We also proposed that those same wireless providers who deliver texts, calls, and routing information, they do so in IP format for next-generation 911 calls. Now today, we continue this ongoing effort to update 911. Here we focus on making sure this system, which was developed during the heyday of the analog phone and circuit switch technology, can fully transition to IP-based next-generation 911. That means, in addition to the work we have already begun on wireless, we propose that wired interconnected VoIP and internet-based TRS providers translate and route 911 calls in an IP-based format when a state or local 911 system can accept next-generation 911 calls. This is a critical part of facilitating the transition of more than 6,000 public safety answering points nationwide to next-generation 911. We do this because what comes next with 911 technology is really big. Next-generation 911 will provide better support for voice, text, data, and video communications. It means more redundancy to protect against outages. And for those who call, it will mean the opportunity to provide real-time video from an emergency. It will mean the ability to provide first responders with instantaneous pictures. And it will mean the ability to transmit a patient's medical records right to 911 dispatchers. And for those who take in those calls in an emergency, all of this data can expedite and inform public safety efforts and dramatically improve emergency response. Like I said, this is critical. But another vital element is funding, because first responders across the country need support for these changes to keep 911 up to date. So as I proposed last year, when Congress authorizes this agency's Spectrum Auction Authority again, it has a golden opportunity to direct revenues from our next set of auctions to a new nationwide fund to support the transition to next generation 911. Let's use public airwaves to support public safety. Let's build something bigger, bolder, and more comprehensive than what those behind that first call in Haleyville ever could imagine. So thank you to the staff who worked on this rulemaking, including Deborah Jordan, David Firth, Nicole McGinnis, Austin Randazzo, John Evanoff, Erica Olson, Brenda Boykin, Rasul Safavian, and Rachel Ware from the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau. Jeremy Marcus, Victoria Randazzo, Ashley Tyson, Elizabeth Mumma, Shannon Lipp, and Ryan McDonald from the Enforcement Bureau. Joy Ragsdale and Shanna Wilkerson from the Office of Communications Business Opportunities, Michelle Ellison, Bill Richardson, Douglas Klein, and Keith McCrickard from the Office of General Counsel, Emily Talaga, Kenneth Lynch, Eugene Kiselev, and Alex Yankovich, along with Cher Lee from the Office of Economics and Analytics, Elizabeth Drugula, Jody May, Gil Struble, Heather Hendrickson, Christy Schumann, and Albert Lewis from the Wireline Competition Bureau, and William David Wallace and Michael Scott from the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau. And with that, we will proceed to a vote on the item. Commissioner Carr.
Approve.
Commissioner Starks.
Approved.
Commissioner Symington.
Approve.
The chair votes aye. The item is adopted with editorial privileges as requested. Madam Secretary, can you please announce the next item on today's agenda?
Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners, item 2 on your agenda is titled Strengthening Consumer Consent for Robocalls and Robotexts, and will be presented by the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau. Alejandro Rourke, and Chief of the Bureau, will give the introduction.
Good morning.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. All right, Mr. Rourke, you're eager, so please proceed.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. I'm very excited about this item, obviously. Today, I am pleased to introduce, on behalf of the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, an item that, if adopted, would help consumers by making it easier for them to stop robocalls and robotexts that they agreed to receive in the past but no longer want. It also sets a firm, swift deadline for robocallers and robotexters to honor these opt-out requests. Before turning the presentation over to the Bureau staff, I would like to thank the Enforcement Bureau, the Offices of Communication, Business Opportunities, and General Counsel for their valuable assistance, and Christy Thornton, Acting Chief of CGB's Consumer Policy Division, will present the item.
Good morning. Over many years, the Commission has made clear that consumers have a right to decide which robocalls they wish to receive by exercising their ability to grant or revoke consent to receive such calls and texts. The notice of proposed rulemaking before you proposes to strengthen the ability of consumers to decide which robocalls and texts they wish to receive, close loopholes that allow certain callers to make robocalls and robotext without consent and without the ability for the consumer to opt out, and codify the Commission's past guidance on consent to make these requirements easily accessible and apparent to callers and consumers. A consumer's ability to say stop to unwanted robocalls is one of the most powerful tools the Telephone Consumer Protection Act provides. The NPRM before you seeks to make that right to say stop more robust and to extend it to more callers. The proposal would also codify these fundamental protections in our rules, making it easier for callers to comply. First, the NPRM proposes to codify and strengthen the Commission's 2015 ruling confirming that callers who have provided prior express consent to receive auto-dialed and pre-recorded voice calls may revoke such consent through any reasonable means. The NPRM proposes a rule that consumers have the right to revoke prior express consent in any reasonable manner. It proposes to strengthen the right by saying callers and texters must honor any attempt to revoke that clearly expresses a desire not to receive further calls or text messages. The NPRM proposes to require callers and texters to honor consumer revocation when they use words such as stop, revoke, end, or opt out, and would prohibit callers from infringing on that right by designating exclusive means to revoke consent that preclude the use of any reasonable method. Moving from words to methods, the NPRM proposes to empower consumers to revoke consent by text message, voicemail, or email to any telephone number or email address at which the consumer can reasonably expect to reach the caller. Second, the NPRM proposes to require that robocallers and robotexters must honor revocation of consent request within 24 hours of receipt. This protection would apply to calls and texts subject to our consent requirements, including company-specific do-not-call lists. The proposal would tighten the Commission's current requirements that allow up to 30 days to honor do-not-call requests in some instances and establish no deadlines at all in other instances. The NPRM recognizes that technology has changed since the Commission adopted the 30-day rule, and that callers may be able to effectuate revocation requests more quickly. Third, the NPRM proposes to allow consumers to specify the types of calls and texts they no longer want from a particular caller or texter. This may be the case, for instance, when a consumer consents to text from their bank for fraud alerts and low balance alerts and transaction alerts. In cases such as those, the NPRM proposes to enable the bank to ask whether the consumer wishes to stop all these messages or wants to continue to get some types. The proposal would ensure, however, that the sender cease all further text unless they hear back from the consumer. Fourth, the NPRM proposes to, for the first time, enable wireless customers to opt out of receiving robocalls and robotext from their provider. The NPRM proposes, in response to petitions filed with the Commission, to bring the current broad exemption for wireless providers in line with exemptions in other areas by limiting the number of calls and text providers can send their customers every 30 days and giving their customers, for the first time, the ability to opt out of all such communications. The Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau recommends adoption of this item and requests editorial privileges. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear comments from the bench. Commissioner Carr.
Yeah, thanks so much to the team for this. You know, we are sort of tackling sort of the mini pandemic, or maybe it's a major pandemic of unwanted robocalls on many, many levels, from a technology level all the way down here to a consumer empowerment level, to make sure that if you did have a relationship with some sort of business that was providing legal robotext or robocalls and you wanted to end that, that you have the ability to do so. We provided some guidance over the years, and I think here we're obviously seeking comment on ways to potentially codify some of that to make sure that we truly are empowering consumers as one piece of a broader effort that we and you are very engaged on to try to crack down on unwanted robocalls. So thanks so much for your work on it.
Commissioner Starks.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. No statement from me, but obviously wherever we can help empower consumers, especially as we continue to fight against robocalls, robotext, is obviously a great place, has my strong support. Thanks for the hard work from the team.
Commissioner Symington.
Thank you. No comments at this time, but I'll also approve this item and thank the team for its hard work.
Thank you, Commissioners. Consumers across the country want fewer junk robocalls and robotexts, and I don't blame them because I'm a consumer myself. When my phone rings or buzzes with a call or text, I am just like everyone else, and as Pavlov would predict, I instinctively reach for my device. But when that call or text is from someone I do not know reaching out to me with something I did not ask for and do not need, that instinct goes from interest to irritation in no time flat. That is why at the FCC we are constantly looking for new ways to stop illegal robocalls and robotexts. It is why today we are updating our policies under the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. This means we propose new rules that strengthen the ability of consumers to decide which robocalls and robotexts they receive. We want to make it clear, if you want to opt out of this junk, you shouldn't be forced to jump through hoops or say magic words. Then we want to make clear that those behind these calls and texts have 24 hours to honor your request. This is progress. But the truth is, we need new tools to curb these calls and texts. The Telephone Consumer Protection Act is now more than 3 decades old. Stretching its language to capture millions of mobile devices that are always ringing and buzzing is not easy. But there are at least 3 additional ways that authority from Congress could help fix that. First, the Supreme Court's recent decision in Facebook v. Duguid narrowed the definition of autodialer under the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. This decision makes it harder for this agency to ensure the protections in this law cover the way so many scam artists now use this technology to reach us with junk calls and texts. Second, this agency needs clear authority to access Bank Secrecy Act information in order to help identify more quickly the financial records of our calling targets without giving those targets suspected of scams a heads up that we are coming for them. Third, I believe it would be beneficial if the agency could try to collect the fines we impose against the bad actors responsible for robotexts and robocalls. Right now, our enforcement work ends when we issue a forfeiture order because we lack the authority to pursue collection in court without the Department of Justice. I'd like to change that. For now, though, I want to thank the robocall response team and staff responsible for their efforts today, including Alejandro Roark, Ediel Casperalta, Mark Stone, Aaron Garza, Christy Thornton, Karen Schroeder, and Richard Smith of the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau. Christy Thompson, Rakesh Patel, Daniel Stepanisic, Mary Romano, and Jane Van Benton of the Enforcement Bureau, Richard Mallon, Melina Barzilai, and Bill Richardson of the Office of General Counsel, Michelle Schaefer and Virginia Metallo of the Office of Economics and Analytics, and Jocelyn James of the Office of Communications Business Opportunities. And with that, we will have a vote on the item. Commissioner Carr.
Approve.
Commissioner Starks.
Approve.
Commissioner Symington.
Approve.
And the chair votes aye. The item is adopted with editorial privileges as requested. Madam Secretary, will you please announce the next item on today's agenda?
Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners, item 3 on your agenda is titled Access to Video Conferencing and will also be presented by the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, and Alejandro Roark, Chief of the Bureau, will give the introduction.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Roark, please proceed.
Thank you, and good morning again, Chairwoman and Commissioners. Today, the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau also presents to you a report and order, a notice of proposed rulemaking, and an order on improving access to video conferencing by people with disabilities. In the past 3 years, video conferencing has become an essential way for people to work, get access to healthcare, and to connect with family and friends. Yet, the accessibility of these video conferencing services has not kept pace with the surge in their use. If adopted, the report and order would clarify that the Commission's Part 4 accessibility rules apply to all services that meet the statutory definition of interoperable video conferencing service, or IVCS. The notice of proposed rulemaking would seek comment on proposals to improve the accessibility of IVCS and promote the integrated use of telecommunications relay services with IVCS. The order would grant a limited waiver of a Commission rule that restricts video relay service users from turning off their cameras while participating in a video conference. I would like to thank the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau staff for their hard work on this item, and I would also like to thank the Office of Economics and Analytics, the Office of General Counsel, the Office of the Managing Director, the Office of Communications Business Opportunities, and the Wireless Communications Bureau for their contributions to this item. Joining me at the table today are Robert Aldridge, Legal Advisor to the Chief of CGB, Daryl Cooper, and Ike Fobikai, both attorney advisors in the Bureau of Disability Rights Office. Bob will present the item.
Good morning. Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. The item before you would resolve a longstanding legal question on the application of the Commission's accessibility rules to video conferencing services, and would seek comment on further improvements to these requirements and on integration of telecommunications relay services, or TRS, with video conferencing services. The Communications Act of 1934, as amended by the 21st Century Communications and Video Accessibility Act of 2010, or CVAA, requires providers of advanced communication services and manufacturers of equipment used with those services to make their services and equipment accessible and usable for persons with disabilities, unless these requirements are not achievable. Advanced communication services are defined to include interoperable video conferencing service, or IVCS, a term that is also defined by the Act. The report and order revisits, in light of evolving circumstances, the views stated by the Commission in 2011 on how to interpret that term. Specifically, the report and order finds that the accessibility requirements of the Act and Part 14 of the Commission's rules apply to all services that meet the statutory definition of interoperable video conferencing service as a service that provides real-time video communications, including audio, to enable users to share information of the user's choosing. A definition that includes services provided on a variety of commonly used video conferencing platforms. The report and order would allow IVCS providers 1 year from its effective date to bring their services into compliance with Part 14. The notice of proposed rulemaking would propose to amend Part 14 of the Commission's rules to add specific performance objectives for enhancing the accessibility of interoperable video conferencing services, including the provision of speech-to-text capabilities, text-to-speech capabilities, and support for American Sign Language interpreting. The notice would also seek comment on whether other performance objectives are needed, for example, to address other types of disabilities or to control the activation and appearance of accessibility features, and whether technical standards should be available as safe harbors. In addition, the notice would propose that the Interstate TRS Fund can be used to support the integrated provision of relay service in video conferences without connecting via a dial-up telephone call. The notice would seek comment on amending the TRS rules to facilitate the integration of TRS with video conferencing, ensure appropriate use of TRS with video conferencing, and prevent waste, fraud, and abuse. On a related issue, the notice would propose a rule amendment to clarify when multiple communications assistants may be assigned to TRS calls that involve users of different forms of TRS. Finally, the order would partially waive for all video relay service, or VRS, providers for 1 year, subject to conditions, a rule that restricts VRS users' ability to turn off their video cameras when not actively participating in a video conference. This rule was originally adopted to prevent fraud on VRS calls, but as we have all learned in the past 3 years, there are multiple reasons why video conference participants may choose to turn off their cameras. The Bureau recommends adoption of the item and requests editorial privileges for technical and conforming edits. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear comments from the bench. Commissioner Carr.
Yeah, thanks so much. I think in a relatively short technology period of time, we all went from, a lot of us went from communicating like this to typing away at our smartphones to now, video conferencing from smartphones, laptops, and other devices. And as we look at sort of that transition in communications, it's important that we also take a look back at the statute and make sure that all of the obligations that are codified there appropriately are applied to technologies where it makes sense. So I'm pleased that we're going down this route to take a look at all of these really important questions and look forward to seeing how the record develops. So thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Starks.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I frequently speak about the necessity of high-speed broadband and connection in today's world. One of the reasons it's so critical is the rise of video conferencing. From Zoom parent-teacher conferences, I know I've been there, to WebEx, to WebEx telehealth calls, to teamwork meetings, web-based video conferencing is now one of the primary ways that we communicate in our personal and our professional lives. So we must make sure that video conferencing is accessible to everyone. The FCC is charged with ensuring that individuals who are deaf, hard of hearing, deaf-blind, or who have speech disabilities can communicate in a manner that is functionally equivalent to those without such disabilities. Too often, as we've heard from our Disability Advisory Committee, that isn't the case with video conferencing. And so today, we take that critical, important step to change that. We find that all services that meet Congress's definition of interoperable video conferencing service must be accessible to and usable by people with disabilities. With this important finding made, we propose performance objectives these services must meet: captioning, text-to-speech, sign language interpreting, including integration with VRS. And so I'm glad to see that this item takes on the critical issue as well of making sure that speech recognition systems are game ready to transcribe the speech of all types of speakers, including those with accents. And so I look forward to seeing how the record develops. Thank you to the team for its hard work. It has my strong support. Thank you to the chair for this item as well. Thank you.
Well said. Commissioner Symington.
Well, as someone with an accent myself, I particularly appreciate Chairman Starks' comments there, Commissioner Starks' comments there, sorry. So of course, I'm happy to support this item. Of course, we all remember when video telephony was a Buck Rogers thing. I don't have a ray gun or a rocket car, but we do have, all of us, pervasive, at least in areas with adequate connectivity, pervasive, always-on video conferencing is just a normal fact of life. This was science fiction even when I was growing up. I mean, I remember in the David Foster Wallace's 90s novel, Infinite Jest, societal consequences of always available video conferencing led many people to turn their cameras off. So I'm glad that that option is going to soon be available to all. But all joking aside, and all levity and the transition aside, it's obvious that functional equivalence is changing as communications media have changed. And it's also obvious that the team working on this has put an enormous amount of work into a very detailed and thoughtful item that thoroughly considers many aspects of the situation. So I'm glad to see the progress we've made, and I'm looking forward to further development of the record. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioners. It was a little over a decade ago that I was asked to go to the White House to attend the signing ceremony for the 21st Century Communications and Video Accessibility Act. It was a gathering I will always remember. For starters, when I was there, I got to meet Stevie Wonder, who is not just a legendary musician, but also a tireless champion for access to communications technology for people with disabilities. I also will never forget this day because I had the privilege of working on this historic civil rights legislation when I served as counsel on the Senate Commerce Committee. And signed, sealed, delivered, there is, in fact, a copy of this legislation on my office wall. The 21st Century Communications and Video Accessibility Act was historic because it updated the Americans with Disabilities Act for the digital age. It put in law the fundamental idea that when technology changes, our accessibility policies need to evolve and keep pace. When I sat in the White House that day, I never could have imagined the global pandemic that would come about 10 years later. It was impossible to understand just how vulnerable we were to COVID and how dramatically this new pathogen would move our lives online. When physical doors closed and group events were canceled during the pandemic, the virtual spaces provided by conferencing platforms, like Zoom, Teams, and WebEx, became an essential way to connect for work, school, health, and simple contact with family and friends. If you want evidence, just look right here at the FCC. For 2 years, we held our monthly open meeting, like the one we're at today, over a video conferencing platform. While we have moved back to in-person meetings, the role video conferencing platforms play in modern life has expanded. It's one of those changes we take out of the pandemic. But for people with disabilities, this shift has been especially challenging. That's because inconsistent accessibility features on these platforms have not always made it possible to communicate. We are changing this today. We start by clarifying that under the 21st Century Communications and Video Accessibility Act, interoperable video conferencing services must comply with accessibility rules. On top of that, we propose new rules to further improve the accessibility of video conferencing services with performance objectives, and also propose that our Telecommunications Relay Service Fund should support the integration of relay services with video conferencing platforms. This effort is consistent with the law. It is also aligned with the fundamental idea behind it, that when technology changes, our accessibility policies need to evolve and keep pace. That principle was apparent for all at the White House signing ceremony. We give it new meaning today. Now, the progress we are making here would not be possible without the work of organizations like Telecommunications for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, the National Association of the Deaf, Communications Service for the Deaf, the Hearing Loss Association of America, the American Council of the Blind, the American Foundation for the Blind, the National Federation of the Blind, Gallaudet University's Technology Access Program, and so many other organizations representing those with disabilities. We are blessed to have their interest and assistance in this effort. I also want to thank the staff who made this order and rulemaking possible, including Bob Aldrich, Adiel Casperalta, Daryl Cooper, Elliot Greenwald, Joshua Mendelson, Ike Ofabaike, Alejandro Roark, Michael Scott, Russ Slutsky, William David Wallace, and Dana Warwick from the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau. Terry Kavanaugh, Michelle Ellison, Richard Mallon, and William Richardson from the Office of General Counsel. Patrick Brogan, Rachel Kazan, Kim Makuch, Mark Montano, Michelle Schaefer, Emily Talaga, Kimberly Wild, and Andrew Wise from the Office of Economics and Analytics. Sumitra Das and Andrew Mullitz from the Office of the Managing Director. Sharon Lee from the Enforcement Bureau, and Matthew Baker, Kirk Burgi, Jody Griffin, and Terry Natoli from the Wireline Competition Bureau. We will proceed to a vote on the item. Commissioner Carr.
Approve.
Commissioner Starks.
Approve.
Commissioner Symington.
Approve.
The chair votes aye. The item is adopted with editorial privileges as requested. Madam Secretary, please announce the next item on today's agenda.
Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners, the final item on your agenda today is titled Shared Use of the 42 to 42.5 Gigahertz Band, Use of Spectrum Bands Above 24 Gigahertz for Mobile Radio Services. And it will be presented by the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau. Blaise Cento, Chief of the Bureau's Broadband Division, will give the introduction.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Ms. Cinto, please proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. Today, the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau is pleased to present for your consideration an item that explores how spectrum in the 42 gigahertz band might be made available through one of several innovative, non-exclusive spectrum access models. I would like to thank the WTB team for their hard work on this item and the other bureaus and offices for their contributions. With me at the table are Susan Mort, WTB Deputy Chief, John Schabel, Deputy Chief of the WTB Broadband Division, and Catherine Schrader, Senior Attorney Advisor in the division. I would also like to recognize the contributions of Jennifer Thompson, Deputy Chief of the Broadband Division. Catherine will present the item.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. The item before you would explore potential shared licensing approaches for the 42 gigahertz band at 42 to 42.5 gigahertz. This notice of proposed rulemaking would seek comment on how a shared licensing approach might be deployed in the 42 gigahertz band to lower barriers to entry for smaller or emerging wireless service providers, encourage competition, and prevent spectrum warehousing. The item would seek comment on 3 specific potential shared licensing models, as well as any other shared licensing models proposed by commenters. First, the item would seek comment on a nationwide non-exclusive licensing model, in which licensees would apply for a license with the Commission and then coordinate and register specific deployment sites with a third-party database administrator. Second, the item would explore a site-based licensing approach, in which licensees would apply for each deployment site directly with the Commission. Third, the item would seek comment on a technology-based sensing approach, in which operators would employ certain technologies to avoid harmful interference from one another without the use of a registration database. The item would also seek comment on other aspects of possible shared licensing approaches, including coordination mechanisms, first-in-time protections, build-out requirements, and potential synergies with the sharing approaches being considered for the lower 37 gigahertz band at 37 to 37.6 gigahertz. The item would seek comment on whether the 42 gigahertz band should be subject to the same license terms and technical rules as the existing Part 30 UMPHIS bands, which are used for other millimeter wave bands in nearby frequency ranges, such as 39 gigahertz, or whether adopting a shared licensing approach would necessitate different rules. The item would also propose to license the 42 gigahertz band as 5 100 megahertz channels. Finally, the item would propose to protect adjacent radio astronomy services in the 42.5 to 43.5 gigahertz band by requiring that operators in the 42 gigahertz band comply with a spectral power flux density limit at radio astronomy sites. The Wireless Telecommunications Bureau recommends adoption of the item and requests editorial privileges. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We will now hear comments from the bench. Commissioner Carr.
Well, thanks so much to the team for the work on this. You know, as Congress works, hopefully, to get us our auction authority back, there is still some forward progress we can continue to make and should make on spectrum matters, this item being one of them. We see comment on a range of options for putting the 42 gigahertz band to even more productive commercial use. And so I look forward to the record as it develops and moving forward on it. So thanks.
Commissioner Starks.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. No statement from me, but a few observations. Obviously, big picture, this notice is really about whether exclusive or shared access works best in 42 gigahertz. If sharing is the answer, exactly what licensing model is going to be best. Even bigger picture, though, we always are thinking about how to manage spectrum frequencies, prevent signal interference. And one of the things, of course, that I, along with, I know the agency more broadly is thinking about is how we can leverage AI and its impact there. I know that on spectrum management, it's a particularly ripe place that the TAC has encouraged us to think about as well. And so I'll be thinking about that and certainly hoping that the record reflects some new ways that we can engage on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Symington.
Thank you. I'm happy to approve today's notice. It explores a wide range of both traditional and innovative licensing regimes for the 42 gigahertz band, yet it also delves into questions that aim to ensure incumbents and primary users are protected from harmful interference. I'd like to thank everyone for their thorough work in this item. It has my support.
Thank you, Commissioners. I spent the first half of this week in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, at a gathering of the International Telecommunication Union. It was a whirlwind of a trip. The fact I'm sitting here now tells you that. But it was worth every minute, because in these international fora, the United States can make clear to our counterparts around the world that we intend to lead on spectrum policy. And so much of what has happened in wireless that has been creative happened here first on our shores. And this agency played no small part in making that true. We were the first to borrow the academic ideas of Ronald Coase and reimagine the distribution of airwaves with auctions. More than 3 decades later, we have raised more than $233 billion with this tool. One, we need Congress to continue. We were also the first to take a handful of underused frequencies known as garbage bands in the 900 megahertz, 2.4 gigahertz, and 5.8 gigahertz range and do something radical, give the public access to those airwaves. It worked, because this is the unlicensed spectrum where Wi-Fi was born. More recently, we blazed a trail for incentive auctions, again, the first to do this in the world. We also created an innovative structure with a hierarchy of rights in the 3.5 gigahertz band, combined with new systems to support dynamic spectrum access. Our goal today is to continue that creative streak. This time, we are going to do it with a millimeter wave band. When I took over at the FCC, I believe the agency had overinvested in millimeter wave auctions at the expense of moving to market the mid-band spectrum essential for nationwide 5G services. So we pivoted, fast. With the help of my colleagues, we quickly launched auctions in the 3.45 gigahertz and 2.5 gigahertz band. Now, with these successful mid-band efforts in the rearview mirror, we are turning back to millimeter wave. But this time, we want to consider something different. In Egypt, so many of my global counterparts are wrestling with the same thing. They look at the wireless future and wonder what to do with high-band airwaves that have so much capacity but such limited propagation. In the United States, we have already auctioned nearly 5 gigahertz of this spectrum for traditional exclusive use. I believe it's now time for something new. In the 42 gigahertz band, we have 500 megahertz of greenfield airwaves with no federal or commercial incumbencies. So we are putting out ideas. We are exploring non-exclusive access models, and this could entail using a technology-based sensing mechanism to help operators actively detect and avoid one another. It could involve non-exclusive nationwide licenses that leverage a database to facilitate coexistence. It also could entail site-based licensing. To get even more out of this effort, we ask if our approaches could be combined with shared use models in other spectrum bands, like the lower 37 gigahertz band. Our goal here is to come up with a new model to lower barriers, encourage competition, and maximize opportunity in millimeter wave spectrum. In short, it's time to be creative. I look forward to the record that develops and then look forward to sharing our creativity with the world. And I want to thank the staff responsible for getting this effort underway: John Lockwood, Susan Mort, John Schabel, Blaise Cinto, Catherine Schroeder, Joel Tavenblot, and Jennifer Tomchin from the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau. Badman Badapur, Michael Ha, Ira Keltz, Nicholas Oros, Ron Rapazzi, and Dana Schaefer from the Office of Engineering and Technology, Judith Dempsey, Evan Quarrell, Paul LaFontaine, Catherine Matraves, Julia McHenry, Gary Michaels, Martha Stansel, and Don Stockdale from the Office of Economics and Analytics, Carl Kensinger and Troy Tanner from the Space Bureau, Deborah Broderson, Doug Klein, and William Richardson from the Office of General Counsel, and Michael Gusso, Joy Ragsdale, and Shauna Wilkerson from the Office of Communications Business Opportunities. And with that, we will proceed to a vote on the item. Commissioner Carr.
Approve.
Commissioner Starks.
Approve.
Commissioner Symington.
Approved.
The chair votes aye. The item is adopted with editorial privileges as requested. All right. Would any of my colleagues like to make announcements at this time? Commissioner Carr.
I do. I have a couple of summer interns. Make sure I pull this up correctly. A couple versions of this. First is Leah Dunn, who's not here today, but she's a second year, 2L, at George Mason's Antonin Scalia Law School. She's a recent journalism grad from Syracuse University. Making sure she's still not here. Yep. She wants to pursue a career in First Amendment, media, and communications law. So I think FCC is a pretty good spot to get a start on those things. She enjoys live music, she tells us, traveling, and cheering on the Chicago White Sox. Not a Cubs fan, apparently. Another fun fact, after spending part of the summer with us, she'll be participating in a course on national security and separation of powers with Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch in Lisbon, Portugal. Our second summer intern is here, Devin Loveland. Devin, I think the protocol is you got to stand for this, so a little bit of attention on you. He's also 2L, but at BYU Law. He received his undergrad degree, cum laude, from BYU in communications. He's interested in communications, environmental, and intellectual property law, and wants to practice appellate litigation. He enjoys, surprisingly enough to me, linoleum block print carving, we've discovered, so we look forward to him doing one of the FCC seal, hopefully, this summer. He also likes to listen to Supreme Court oral arguments, which is pretty interesting. And he likes a new hit TV series called Shrinking, which I haven't seen yet, but I'm pretty sure it stars Indiana Jones from what I can tell on a quick internet search. He also interned for the Food Network during college and coordinated on a number of different shows, including for Cake Wars. So maybe we can get that going as well this summer. So it's going to be an exciting time in the Carr office this summer. So welcome to those interns.
All right. Commissioner Starks.
I, too, have interns that I would like to announce. They dominated their finals, no doubt, and have arrived. The first is Taylor Lawing. Stand and be recognized, Taylor. Yes, is a rising 3L at Vanderbilt Law School. I'd also like to announce now Sean Harms is a rising 3L at the University of Colorado Boulder. Thank you, Sean. And Tamris Shaw, a rising 2L at the University of California Irvine School of Law. She's also my Early Career Diversity Initiative Program intern. And fourth, who's joining us virtually, is Emma Lawrence, a rising 2L at Cornell Law School. I encourage all of you to come meet them. It's not a dating show like what Commissioner Carr just showed us here, giving us all their background, but glad to have my interns here.
It's getting interesting. Commissioner Symington.
Thank you. Yes, I do have a few people to announce. Like Commissioner Starks, I'm going to keep the bios a little bit brief because I've got 5 of them to announce, and I don't want to take up too much meeting time. But since it appears that it's protocol, please do stand up. First, I'd like to welcome James Weich, candidate for a JD at Harvard, class of 2025. He's, I think, one of the most incredible things about him. I know how difficult it is to be an athlete because I was never able to manage it, but he was a 3-year letterman in baseball. So if anyone feels like organizing a softball league, then I suspect he would have a pretty wicked pitch. Thank you, James. Next, we've got Alexandra Chandler. She's a crosstown student. She didn't have to move in because she's already at Georgetown Law, where she's part of the class of 2025 for the JD. Alexandra is got her BA at Baylor, but what I find far more interesting is that she built turtle hatcheries on Costa Rican beaches for an organization called The Leap. So she's already done more good than I'm ever likely to do. Thank you very much, Alexandra. Next, we have Nick Capone. He's currently at Penn Law, class of 2025 for JD. He went to Penn State, so he's covered the full range of Penn for undergrad, where he majored in cybersecurity and was a senior cyber risk consultant at Deloitte prior to law school. So, so he'll hopefully help us to grasp, or in my case, to at least understand the words relating to current cybersecurity challenges. Thank you very much, Nick. Also with us today is Max Larson. Max is still an undergraduate. He's part of the BA class of 2025 at Fordham, and he's involved with a wide variety of things at Fordham. But when I asked him to prepare a survey on internet and broadband tax approaches, I had it on my desk almost immediately. So I don't even know what to say. He's already cashing in on the work product. So we're definitely getting our money's worth out of him. Unfortunately, we can't pay our interns. But thank you, Max. And then finally, we have an intern that's who's remote and will be starting next week. Michelle Wu, also an undergrad, and also at Penn. So we've got a Penn theme and an undergrad theme going. She's in the philosophy, politics, and econ program at Penn, which I have to say, this is the original PPE degree is a British innovation. So it's what they're doing at Cambridge and Oxford. So I guess Penn is in on the deal now, part of the class of December 2023, I should say. She plays the flute, so it's nice to have another musician around. And then she's fluent in Korean, which I think will be very helpful for us as we continue to engage with South Korean leadership in ATSC3 and internet policy, where there are many innovations taking place. That's my intern team. Thanks very much, everyone. Looking forward to working with you.
All right, thank you, commissioners. Before we adjourn, get comfortable because I got a series of announcements. I want to start by saying that today I'm humbled to recognize a longtime member of the FCC family, Thomas Lucy, passed away on May 16th of this year. Now, he truly epitomized the life of a public servant. He was a physicist, an electronics engineer who was employed at first for the Naval Surface Warfare Center before joining the FCC in 1974. So if you're counting, that's nearly 5 decades of service with the FCC and almost 55 of government service. What an amazing life and service to our country. And during his time at the agency, he served in what was then called the Safety and Special Radio Services Bureau and later the Mass Media Bureau before joining the International Bureau, which of course recently became the Office of International Affairs. When he joined the Office of International Affairs, he continued his longtime work on behalf of international high-frequency broadcasters. It was an area he specialized in. Please join me in taking a moment to honor Thomas Lucy for his significant service, contributions to the FCC, and also his contributions to the global international high-frequency community. We also have some retirements. And I will invite anyone who's in this room, because I see some of them, to stand up while we honor you. Susan Launer of the Office of General Counsel is retiring from the FCC after nearly 27 years. She joined the agency in 1996 from private practice to help implement a little law called the Telecommunications Act of 1996. After a stint in the Common Carrier Bureau, she made the Office of General Counsel her home. First as an appellate attorney and then as Deputy Associate General Counsel, Susan has served in that management role for, get this, the past 25 years. She has seen it all. She worked with the Department of Justice to enforce some of the Commission's monetary forfeitures, was a force to count on for review of enforcement actions, and she also specialized in labor relations litigation. She was really an all-around go-to lawyer here with sound judgment and wise counsel. We wish her all good things in retirement. Bill Richardson is retiring after over a decade of service in the Office of General Counsel. After a distinguished career in the private sector, Bill joined the FCC and served for the last 7 years as Deputy Associate General Counsel for Agenda Review. That means so many of us during the last decade have benefited from Bill's knowledge, wisdom, and enthusiasm for communications and administrative law. Now, earlier in his career, Bill served as Deputy General Counsel at the Office of Management and Budget and Senior Counsel at the Administrative Conference of the United States. Now, I am personally grateful to Bill because he agreed to represent the agency at a hearing in the House Energy and Commerce Committee on satellite matters earlier this year, where he was a technical wonder sitting at the witness table. I want to thank you for that, but also thank you for your service. You will be missed. Lauren Kravitz, who is, there she goes. She will be leaving the commission at the end of June after, 24 years. She joined the agency after working on Capitol Hill and at a law firm. She's worn so many hats at the commission. She started in the Wireless Bureau, where she led the Bureau's transaction team and later handled media relations. Then she moved to the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs, where she established a federal-state team that focused on increasing participation in the Lifeline program. Later, Lauren moved to the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau as Deputy Chief in the Cybersecurity and Communications Reliability Division, where she managed the legal team working on network and 911 reliability issues, and some of the Commission's first forays into cybersecurity matters. For the last 8 years, she served as the Bureau's Chief of Staff. And most recently, and for this I'm especially grateful, Lauren has co-led the Cybersecurity Forum for Independent and Executive Branch Regulators, a really broad coalition of federal agencies that I lead to work on ways to harmonize regulatory oversight of cybersecurity. It's so technical, so detailed, and so important, so thank you for that. We're going to miss her warmth, energy, and can-do attitude, and we wish her all the best in her next chapter. Melanie Gottschall is an attorney advisor in the Enforcement Bureau's Investigations and Hearings Division, and she's retiring after 38 years of government service. She served as an attorney with the Department of Labor and then joined the FCC in 1985, and before that was a law clerk at the Department of Defense. Her extensive knowledge of the Commission's broadcast regulations will be missed, as will her dedication to public service. Now, Richard Arsenault is retiring after 24 years at the FCC, all of them as an attorney in the Wireless Bureau. Richard's well known for working closely with the nation's rails to enable their deployment of that life-saving technology that we call positive train control systems. As part of that effort, he's even operated a freight locomotive on a closed PTC test track, and not all of us can say that. Now, after leaving the commission, Richard intends to study wolves at Yellowstone, which was the first national park established by President Ulysses Grant. Now, that is a plan for retirement. All right, Terry Pacheco is the FCC's accessibility specialist in the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau and plans to retire July 1st. She got her start in public service in 1970, working on food programs in Massachusetts. She also spent 8 years working for the Internal Revenue Service and 7 years as Director of Affiliate Services and Development for the American Council of the Blind. So Terry joined the FCC about a decade ago in 2014. And her highlights include meeting Stevie Wonder when he visited the agency. We have something in common, to discuss audio description for video programming. Terry also taught countless colleagues how to create accessible documents and worked with our library staff to simplify documents to make them easier for people with disabilities to access. Although she's leaving civil service, Terry has dedicated her life to public service and plans to continue doing so. She's going to be serving on the board of the American Council of the Blind and working as president of Metropolitan Washington EAR. And that's a group of volunteers who record daily newspaper articles for those who are print disabled. What a champion she has been for those with disabilities, and we wish her all the best going forward, especially as this year she and her husband will be celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary in August. All right. Madam Secretary, will you please announce the next date for the Commission's monthly agenda meeting?
The next agenda meeting of the Federal Communications Commission is Thursday, July 20th, 2023.
Until then, we stand adjourned.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? I don't know if anyone can hear me. Is it on? All right, great. Just wanted folks to know, all right, this room is lively. Can we just have everyone's 5 minutes of attention real quick? Hi, everyone. Good morning. Hi, Paloma Perez, Press Secretary for the FCC. Just quickly want to let folks know our normal scheduled press conference is not going to be going ahead because we actually don't have our reporters in person today. I am thinking like the rest of us, they were advised to stay home or limit time outside because of the wildfire air advisory. So just wanted to let folks know. Any questions from the media or press, please direct them to the Office of Media Relations. And that's it. Have a good afternoon.